You're watching TelecomTV from SCWS World 2017 in London. And I'm joined now by Stéphane Daubly, who is Head of Small Cells Product Marketing at Nokia. Stéphane, thanks for joining us on TelecomTV. Now here we are in London, and yet you can't help but notice that Europe appears to lag behind Asia and North America in terms of small cell deployments.
Yeah, it's probably a good location to be in, I guess, because that's exactly the kind of thing we'd like to see more of. Europe taking a bit more center stage on small cell deployment. I mean, there's clearly been a massive traction, and that took a while. It took a while to come to even the North American market or Asia, but really now we are now for the last 2 years seeing significant volumes. The operator being very clever with the opportunity that small cell bring, and really exploiting as many use cases as possible. And interestingly, beyond the one you expect, like North America or even the Asian market or China, we are seeing significant deployments of small cells. In Latin America, very few people expect it, or even Middle East. But European operators still to be lagging behind. There's a couple of reasons for that. One of them may be the spectrum. There's a good spectrum ownership by many operators here, and maybe the consumption of data is not as high. But I think it's a mindset thing. I think the operator, it takes a little while for them to get the small cell mindset. They've been deploying macro for years, and I think there's an English expression that says, when you've got a hammer in your hand, everything looks like a nail, and I think that's what it is. It's about getting them to understand how the other operators are using small cell, the opportunities small cell brings beyond pure coverage and capacity. And we've seen recent movements in European operators around small cells. One that I can mention is with O2 UK, for example, where we've signed an agreement for network transformation in London and the South East with a big small cell component that we hope will be a showcase example for other operators in Europe to realize the potential and the benefit of small cell deployment once they see the improvement in the O2 networks that small cell can bring in a big city like in London.
You mentioned it's a mindset thing, but do we need the private sector, especially property developers, to collaborate more in integrating small cells at an earlier stage?
Well, so there's probably two areas here. So the first one thing that we're seeing, and that's probably where the European operators will pick up the pace on small cell deployment, is indoor, because the indoor use case is only getting worse and worse with higher energy efficient building. So we've got, for example, in that area some big developments of residential apartments who are within the new regulation. And the issue if you walk on the balcony of the apartments, you may get fantastic 1 gigabit coverage performance on LTE. You walk back in, you close your window, and you got nothing, no GSM, no HSPA. I mean, some of the new triple glazed window with metal coating give you up to 30 dB attenuation. That basically means people in those new apartments will struggle to get a phone connection, even a basic thing to even phone, the fireman if there's a fire in their flat. So that's clearly an issue because people nowadays don't sign up necessarily for fixed line mobile connection. So from an indoor point of view, that's clearly an area where we see the need for operators to embrace that earlier. They do that typically for large public indoor, but we've got with small cell now a very cost-effective way to implement dedicated small cell networks in indoor for a very low cost and also a very fast deployment. So that's one side. On the private LTE or the industry kind of vertical picking up small cell, we see that as the next phase of growth coming on top of what we're seeing today. Because clearly once you take technologies such as multifier, which is LTE in the unlicensed spectrum, or even what we're seeing in the US with CBRS, 3.5 gigahertz lightly licensed spectrum, then suddenly all the vertical will suddenly see an opportunity in leveraging the benefit of LTE for a number of use cases. For example, we're deploying small cells, LTE small cell in Australia, for open pit mining, for example, for self-driving trucks, so that a couple of thousand kilometers away, somebody can be controlling what's happening in the mine. We're seeing very innovative deployment as well, for example, in China, in harbor, for example, where LTE and small cell are being used together with things like MEC, multi-access edge computing, to manage all the video surveillance, track all the trucks by GPS in the harbor to improve the efficiency of businesses. So that's clearly could be something that's applied in the UK and in the rest of Europe. And in that case, that would be the enterprise directly driving the business. So that may be something that comes on top of the expected deployment by MNO, hopefully will come very soon in Europe as well.
So is this multi-access technology environment here to stay, or is it merely an interim step towards a longer-term, more converged future?
Well, so if you think about MEC, Nokia launched that innovation 5 years ago. It was called Liquid Application at the time. We now have taken that into the standard with ETSI as we realized it needed a full ecosystem. But the whole concept is to bring a computing node as close as possible to your small cell deployment and use that computing node to bring added value contextual application that runs really close to your small cell. So for example, in a city, you may be caching all the Google Map tiles so that it delivers faster to you. But when you apply that, for example, to a stadium, or what we've done for a number of car races around the world, we do, for example, video orchestration. That means we pick up all the video feeds from all the different cameras around in the stadium or even around the racetrack. We compress that and encode that and deliver that to the subscriber. So as they watch the race, for example, they effectively can choose to sit directly in the race car of their preferred driver and see that with no latency because the data is processed locally, as opposed to broadcast where you may have to 30-35 second delay. So there's a number of things we can do with this computing node actually distributed in those networks to bring added value application, augmented reality, for example, or even geolocation. So there's plenty of application that we see MEC complementing the small cell, meaning its small cell are more than just pure coverage and capacity, but we see the operator adding value in the strategic location they're deploying the small cells in. And something that also can apply, for example, in the industry verticals, where you need a very low latency type IoT application. We see that also as an opportunity to compute all the IoT processing directly close to the small cells and bring low latency that are actually quite close to what you will see on 5G using 4G small cells.
Looking at the evolution of small cells over the last 10 years, say, they've moved from being a niche access product into a more wider role. How will this evolution continue as we move towards 5G? Yeah,
I mean, 5G is really, one of the key definitions of 5G is almost small cells. So, when you think about ultra broadband as an objective or the industrial IoT that 5G promises, really you are talking about small cell. The same way on the technical requirement side of things with 5G, talking about higher frequency, talking about aggregations of unlicensed technology and aggregation between macros and small cells, 4G and 5G together, you're really talking about some of the things that we're doing today with small cells. So small cell, as you talked about, has gone very far, starting with solutions such as Femto that were targeted to the home and fixing a coverage problem in the majority of cases. We're now seeing the small cell use cases really expanding to very exotic things. We're seeing small cell being used in rural area to expand the connectivity in rural black spots, deploying one small cell per village, for example, on the tallest building, could be a church, and providing coverage. We have such an example of deployment in Scotland on Ireland where farmers themselves are deploying their small cell, working with the operator. It's something that we actually shortlisted for an awards tonight with Everything Everywhere. So that's one of the things, but we see a lot of the business innovation possible with small cells, and really the range of small cell we have today, starting from low-end femto solution for homes and SOHO type deployments to much more beefy type small cell solutions, such as we have with the FlexiZone solution from Nokia that has the same capacity as a macro. And we see, for example, a couple of use cases we've done recently for the pilgrimage at the Mecca in Saudi Arabia, where we had close to 100 small cells supporting 1.8 million pilgrims and providing them high-speed connectivity, providing them combined with MEC, some application for them to be able to find their family or friends in that big crowd. So there's really the potential for business innovation using small cell is huge, and we see that having a big impact on not just the operator but also the industry.
Stéphane, thank you very much indeed.
That's good. Thank you.